Hey everybody, welcome to another drive-through rundown. Today I'm going to talk about Hegemonic from Minion Games. Now this is basically a space 4X game, explore, build, fight, and plot. I've had a chance to actually play this once only so far, but I thought I'd give you kind of a glorified unboxing, go over some of the rules, some of the details in how you're going to be expanding your empire and trying to sort of dominate the galaxy here. So let's get a little bit of a board set up and I can kind of show you some of the, quite frankly, amazing components that come in this game. So I've gone ahead and set up a 4-player game here. You can see there's basically 4 home sectors in different colors there, and then the board is made up of these sort of large hexagonal shapes here, and what you're trying to do is basically have area majority in each of these different sectors of the galaxy here. So when you come to score, it's easy just to pull that out and then sort of count everything that's on there. You've also got a sort of galactic center in the middle of the board, and this is actually a hex that you cannot ever pass through, but it also acts as a little round tracker to track the different phases of the game. And let's go ahead and just kind of walk through what all these different phases are and how they're going to work. That should give you a good idea of what this game is like to play. So you can see here the first phase here is the collection phase. And to understand that, we're going to need to look at each of the individual player boards. So here we can see a player board. And it's basically got 3 areas of expertise and things that you are trying to control in the game. So you've got your industrial, your political, and your martial, or like your warfare. And these player boards are just awesome. So you can see as you build these little industrial bases here, these are going to come off and it's going to affect your income in the game as well as your political bases. So as you get these out on the board, you can just put them out and then you can easily reference the different numbers here, and I'll explain what these are. So if this were the case here, we can look at our income, and this is going to be the rightmost yellow number of each of these areas added up. So we've got 4, 8, 12 here. So that's going to be the total income during that first phase of the collection for each round. And then underneath each of these, you can see how much it's going to cost you in caps or money to be able to build the base. So you can see these industrial bases will cost you 3, and then 4, and then down here is 3. So it's going to get more expensive as you go up. However, your income is actually going to go down. So it's a lot like Eclipse, where you have, you get more stuff on the board and it costs you more to sort of maintain your empire. And speaking of caps, we'll just take a quick look at the player money here. So we've got 5s and 1s here, and these are nice thick cardboard money, pretty cool looking. And the last thing to look at for right now is the retention number here. And the retention number is the amount of caps that you're allowed to carry through into the next round, so you don't just sit there and hoard up money every turn. So if we took a look at this here, let's take these off, and you can see that we're just going to look at the lowest number here that's inside one of these places, so we could actually hold now $8 worth of money over into the next round. So after collection, we're going to go into expansion, and this is an interesting thing because I actually like quite a bit better how this does over Eclipse. So let's talk about how expansion, or almost exploration, is going to work. So here we've got the hexes that we're going to be basically drawing from and exploring and then putting out on the empty spots in each of these different sector boards here. Now to start the game, players will get a hand of these. They'll be able to put some of these out, and then they're going to put the rest here sort of in a pool of face-up tiles there. So what you're going to do when it's your turn to expand is you're going to flip up a tile, you're going to add it here to the pool, and then you're going to be able to choose from one of the face-up tiles there. So it gives you a lot more variety and choice, and a little bit more control over what you're going to place out onto the board. So a couple of things to note about these tiles here is you can see we have these different shapes and numbers and all kinds of things, and you've got sort of a different background that also will match this little icon here, which is the faction. So you can see all of the green ones here have this little icon here. So this, when you think in terms of politics, you're going to want to keep in mind sort of which faction you're aligning yourself with, as sort of like these alien factions that you want to align yourself with politically and be able to exert and subvert and things like that with that particular faction. Now you can see we've got nice shaped things. So the little square spots are for your industrial, the circles are for political, and then we've got the triangles here, which are for the military aspect of it. I'll talk more in detail about these when I talk about how to dominate areas and actually have conflicts with the other players. Now the next thing you're going to do is be able to draw these technology cards. Now you can draw the technology cards here from either the top of the deck, or you can actually get the top card of the discard pile. Now you may also be able to draw them from your own player board. I'll talk about that in a second, but let's just take a quick look at these here. So you can see we've got technologies in the different 3 areas. We've got tier 1, tier 3, we've got tier 2 technologies, and these are sort of dual purpose cards here. So when you have a conflict in a particular region, you can take and play these cards and add a boost to the total power of whatever you have out there on the board in terms of the different buildings and bases and fleets and everything. So this is kind of like your die roll in the game. So you may want to hold a card because it has a high value for a particular kind of conflict, but you also may want to be able to use its special ability and use that to sort of give you different, powers and different shortcuts and tricks that you can do throughout the game. So let's talk about this top part right now as far as how to get these different tiers out. Now, there's a couple areas along the outside of the player board that has to do with the cards. So you've got 3 basically advanced tech slots here, and you can see which techs are legal to build based on how many of the buildings that you've uncovered here. So you can see we've got tier 1 bracket here, tier 2, and tier 3. So once you've uncovered one of the buildings or bases in that tier, then you're able to advance in that tier though. So right now, let's see, we could do basically all tier 1, but if we got some of these tier 2 yellow technologies, we could then take and advance this tier 2 industrial tech, paying the cost. And then, you got the little ability. The cost for all destroyer takeover actions is reduced by $1. The reduction cannot be applied towards unit movement costs. So you take and stick that in here, and now you have this ability. Now the other little trick to know is, now that I have a tier 2, then I can now put a tier 3 yellow into play, even though I don't necessarily have these uncovered. So you maybe can skip ahead, like 1 or 2 levels if you invest early in that specific branch of technology. Then you can jump ahead because you do have a tier 2, so you can stack a tier 3 on it even though you haven't uncovered the buildings there. So during the expansion phase, after you collect and lay out a tile, and then you collect a new technology, you can actually draw it from here if you wish. And then you also have to discard a technology, so it could be one from your hand, or you can even discard one out of here if you no longer think you have use for it. Now real quickly, the other area of the board down here is called the house ability. And so the game tells you to play with these leaders after you're familiar with the game. And in my first game, we actually played with the leaders, and I thought it was actually really cool. I really liked the leader ability. So, you can, take it for what you will, but I would say definitely go ahead and try to play with these. Now the cool thing here is when you get a leader, everybody's going to get one at random at the start of the game. You're going to tuck it under here. And then during the collection phase, these are going to slide out every collection phase. So the abilities are going to get stronger and stronger until you get to a level 3. Then when you activate it, you're going to slide it all the way back in. And then the next collection phase, it'll start coming back out again. So this is a really cool little mechanism here that gives each player, there's a ton of different special abilities and little bonuses that you can get for your empire. So after the expansion phase, you're going to have 3 phases of actions. I'll talk about that. And then you'll have an arbitration phase. So let's talk about the meat of the game, these 3 phases of action. So each player has an identical deck of these action cards in their color, and there's 6 of these. And so what's going to happen each phase, all the players are going to choose one of the action cards, put them face down, and then we're going to reveal them. And then they're going to go in order of this sort of initiative value here. So the 1s will go before the 2s, which will go before the 3s and the 4s. Now if you have a tie, you have here what's called the arbiter. And the arbiter is basically the start player. And what they're going to do is they're actually going to be able to choose. So the arbitration, which I mentioned this before, that is going to go to the person who has the most caps, before we go into the next round of collection. And so they're going to be able to actually sort of break ties, if you will, and dictate. So if a couple of us, put out 2 of these 2 initiatives, they can say, okay, Billy, you go first, and then Joel, you'll go. And when you take the actions, you can actually do 2 actions based on what the card shows you. And you can actually do the same action twice. So if you look at this assault here, you can basically choose one of these. You can destroy some different bases and different things like that, or you can just choose the basic action. And most of these cards have that same basic action that you can do. So I could do 2 destroys or 2 basics or 1 of each, and then the next guy can do this, and I'll explain what these do in a second. Basically, you're going to do that 3 times, then you go into the arbitration phase. And then you're going to choose the arbiter, so whoever has the most caps, and then you're going to discard down to whatever your retention limit is, and then you're going to score. And I'll talk about scoring in a second, but I want to talk a little bit about the actions. I'm not going to get in too much detail here, But as I said, you can do building, so I can build political, military, industrial. I can do an assault on one of those. I can do subversion, which is pretty interesting, and then you can kind of do this sort of discover sort of a capitalized thing. So you can add more sectors, do some different research types of things, and then again, like I said, we're going to have the score. So let's talk a little bit about how you're going to do building and assaulting and different stuff like that. So if we look at these different attributes on these tiles here, and this is a home tile, let's take a look at a couple of things here. So we have here first the industrial, and you can see here we've got a range. You've got a number with this little arrow. So the political has a range, and the military has a range. And then you've got the power, which is these little starbursts here. So the range is basically how far you can sort of expand from that spot based on what you're trying to expand from or build from or have a conflict from. So now all of the industrials are always 1 and 1. So in the case of industrial, it's very simple. So when you build, you can build up to 1 hex away. So if we take a look at this one here, we've got some industrial here. So let's say this had been explored, and then we want to go ahead and build in here. So we can go ahead and build within 1 range of that. So you can also do sort of a chaining. So I can place this and this here, and remember the cost is defined by the red number there of whatever your next available item is going to be. So I could build those if I wanted. I pay the amount in caps. And then the other thing that you can do with the industrial expansion is you can see here we've got a gate range. So each player on their player board has these gates, and you see we've got 2 A's, 2 B's, and 2 C's. And so the cost for the gate here is $3, and then you'll basically take the matching gates, and then you'll put them within a certain range, basically again dictated by how far you've unlocked there. So your first gate always has to be where there's some industry. It doesn't necessarily have to be even your industry, but you can go ahead and put that there. And let's say we had a range of 3, so we could do 1, 2, then maybe 3 over here into this spot here. And the cool thing about this is very interesting is most of the board is built up by adjacency of actually just physical adjacency, but as soon as you make a gate, then these 2 here are basically considered adjacent. And it's adjacent for everybody. So if you build a gate over here and then the orange player comes in, then he's going to be able to be adjacent. So if he had an industrial sector here, again remember, so let's say I didn't build here and then we had some orange ones. Let's just move this over here for argument's sake. And so he wants to now build, basically again, remember the range is 1. So he could go ahead and the orange player can now build one of their industrial bases there. So as the game develops, the board really takes on kind of a life of its own, especially around these gates here. Similar here with the political bases here, you can see you've got a range of 1 there. So if a purple wanted to build into here, they could do that. Politics, you can also build these agents here, and you can see the agent cost here actually goes down, and the agents are these little suckers here. And these are pretty interesting. These are sort of like little spies that you can get out. So you can build one of these maybe with your political base, and then you can also take an action to infiltrate and basically move this guy. So he can pretty much move wherever he wants, but anytime you cross one of these red borders, you're going to have to pay $2. And the interesting thing to keep in mind now with the power of these political bases here is the color and or the icon of each of these different hexes here. So again, remember we've got the yellow one with that little shape there and the green ones, and then we've also got the purple ones here. So your political alignment is going to matter which basically color hex you're on. So that's pretty cool. So kind of like how you can chain your industrial, where you build industrial, maybe build a gate, then chain and build another industrial, again, as long as you can pay for it. You can, build an agent or have an agent maybe already built and then infiltrate with it and then build some bases out of that side. So you can do some nice little chaining of actions and getting these buildings and different fleets and agents and stuff out. Military is a little bit interesting here. So you can see we have these triangles here, and it can tell you basically how many triangles you can stack on there. And that is going to be basically equal to the power here. So if we build a little military base here, we're basically going to have 1 power, but you notice that it has actually 0 range. Not a greatest sector for a military base, but if this is a nice and juicy one here, you can see you can have 1 to 2 here, so I can put this on there, and then I can actually stack another one on top of that. So let's do that there without trying to drop them. Oh well. So you can stack these on here, so the range is actually going to vary based on how many of these stacks you have on there. So yeah, you've got either 1 or 2 power, and now that we have 2 on there, now we have a little bit extra of a range. So the military is a little bit more slower of a buildup, but it is, once it kind of gets going, you can get pretty entrenched. Again, industrial is always, 1 range, 1 power. The political are going to vary here. So you've got this kind of juicy one here. This is actually 3 power with 1 range. So these are going to be sort of opportunistic, grabs at these sectors. And then again, the military is going to be sort of a slow burn to, it may start off low, but you're going to be able to build it up over time. Okay, let's talk real briefly about the different types of conflicts that can happen. I'm not going to go into super detail on this because it is a little bit involved, and in the interest of time and video presentation, I don't want to bog down in that because it could take me about 10 or 15 minutes to go over each of the different things. The rulebook does spell it out actually pretty clearly. Basically, you're going to have conflicts between the different types. So you can have martial versus political, or political versus martial, or industrial versus industrial, or industrial versus political, stuff like that. So what you can see here is some of these cards you can do the building, and then you can do sort of an attacking action here. You can do a strike, so this is like sort of red on red, and then yellow on yellow. And you've got these other 2 cards here. You've got an assault here, which is a destroy. You're just trying to basically remove the opponent's pieces. And then you've got here, where to go? Subvert here to sort of have cross color fight. So you maybe do sort of an attack. Let's see, it's called corruption here with your industrial on the political or military. You may do sort of a political annexation. Basically, you're trying to politically subvert and get them under your control, and you can do a straight up invade with your red. So what you're going to be doing is comparing power. Okay, so if we take a look at these tiles here. So like we said here, all of the yellows have 1 range, 1 power. And then the blue ones here will have different levels of power. And then the red ones, depending on how much you build them up, can have 1 power, or if you were to build this one up a little bit, 1 or 2 power. Now the way that the power is able to extend across the board is really the very interesting part of the game. So if you're trying to attack, with yellow onto something else, you basically have a range of everything that is going to be able to affect it. So for example, if I was going from this sector to this sector, that my range is always 1, and then anything that's within 1 range of this, so everything kind of surrounding this, will also add to its power. And the same for the defender, because the industrial is very simple. So if you're attacking or defending with industrial, basically you add up all the power there, and then you're going to apply it. Now you can do industrial, let's say, on political. Now the political, you're going to again look at the color here. So when you're trying to figure out how much power to add to your political, you're going to find all the other areas where you have political pieces that match the color and faction. So you're going to look at all of the yellow ones here. So if this particular political base was being attacked somewhere out here, you're going to add the 1 power, and then you're going to look at the other ones here and add these. So all of these factions are going to work together in a political way, when you apply that power. So you could have like industrial versus political. So again, the industrial is everything adjacent, and the political, for the most part, is going to be everything in that same color. So there's a lot to kind of consider and grasp on the board. And also remember, I mentioned the gates as well, is basically everything is going to be adjacent to it. So you can kind of chain that through these gates, and that's really going to add to the amount of things that you have to consider. It's a lot to kind of crunch and chew on. Now, the most sort of complex or in-depth are these military ones here. So you can see the range is actually going to increase there, and you're going to be able to sort of chain these. So if this guy was here, then, and this guy was here, if you've only got 1 triangle there, it has a range of 0. So this guy's not going to be able to help this guy and assist this guy. But if you build more up, then you're going to be able to sort of jump across more, sectors, and be able to add those. And then the interesting thing about the military is you can actually sort of daisy chain it. So if this guy's within range of this guy, who's in range of this guy, who maybe is over here, then you can really kind of ship your fleets in. And like I said, it's kind of a slow burn, but once you get it set up, you can have a very far-reaching grasp based on the sort of number of triangles that you lay out on the board. And then you've also got to consider that the fleets here These are these little ships here like that. These you can send out, and these will sort of act as a sort of a foothold. So if you get your fleet in there and you have a base that's within a equal number of hexes equal to its range, you'll be able to sort of daisy chain all of that, you know, towards the fleet. And then, you know, you've got your little political operative here, and he can go out, and then if he's within range of your political bases, or, you know, then you can apply which color he's in. So there's a lot to really take in here and consider. Once you play a couple of rounds of this, though, it is pretty easy to grasp. And as I said, they have basically an example for every sort of nuance and, you know, permutation of how these work. So after you do all of your actions there, you're going to do 3 actions, and, you know, 2 actions possibly per card. Then you're going to have your arbitration phase, and then you're going to, you know, discard down your money, see who the arbiter is, and then, like I said, you're going to score each of these boards here. And so there are nice player aids here that'll give you sort of all the different things that you can do here, the different phases, and more importantly, you've got the number of points here. So whoever has the most base power, so you can look at the power of everything that your pieces are on here, and then whoever has the most is going to get 6, second most 3, and then 1 and 1. And then having power in here, you're going to get a little bit of a bonus. So everything in here is going to be worth more. So if you control that, you get 7 and so on. So you're going to score that every single round. Basically, you're going to play until you either fill up the board with all the tiles, or you run out of the stack here. And I should say on the back of these, actually, they do have nice examples of the power. So you can see here, probably the most complex one, not really that complex, but you've got here. So you've got this guy here. He is within range 2 of here, so he can reach here, he can reach here. You've got your feet with +2, so everything can add there. And then, you know, you can see here you've got the different colors. So since we're having a you know, political conflict, we're going to look at all of the light colored tiles and stuff. So these are really nice here. So that's pretty much a really brief overview of the game. I really like how the cards operate, because when you apply these to combat, you're actually going to put them here in the inactive tech. And you can, if you want, at the end of the round, pull these back into your hand, or you can discard them, and then you get new cards and things like that. So if you've got one that you kind of want to reuse, you can do that. But then you're going to think about, you know, getting the different techs out here. These are really going to help you, you know, with lots of different things. And you are actually going to score bonus points there at the end of the game for especially the higher level techs. These are going to give you a good chunk of points. So there's a lot going on in this game. It is actually relatively abstract, but in a lot of ways it has some nice theme. And like I said, the way that the different bases and stuff are going to interact with each other and build up is very, very interesting. And the sort of combat is also very interesting. It's not, you know, a big dice fest, which is, you know, kind of refreshing. I really do like how these cards work and how they have, you know, giving you the different choices in the game. Now, as I said, I've only played this once. I am going to, you know, get some more plays of this in. It's going to take some time. The game is relatively long, especially as you get up to 5 and 6 players. I believe the publisher told me, he was the one that demoed the game for me. He said if you're playing with 5 and 6 players, you're looking at a 4-hour game. So I think you can definitely get this down to a couple hours, maybe with a 3-player game or so. But it's definitely an enjoyable game. Very meaty, very crunchy. There's a lot to take in. You know, you're going to have these cards. You're going to have to look at how the board's shaping out. Once you start adding gates to the board, it really becomes super complex. But as you can see, I think the components are just fantastic. I love stacking the triangles, these sort of meaty, chunky little, you know, plastic board cubes for the industry. I like how the clarity of the different colors and the tiles work. I like, you know, compared to Clips, again, this is just one play. It does kind of fix some of the issues. You know, I really love Eclipse, so I don't really have that many issues with it, but I like how the exploration is handled here. There's not a lot you can really get screwed on. I like how the board shapes up and the sort of the scope of the game. So it's been explained to me, and it kind of mentions this in the rule book, that the game takes over a very long scope. So you think of this sort of like as a millennia, you know, because moving a fleet from, you know, one part of the galaxy to the next actually takes a really long time. And it does kind of feel like you're doing this, you know, epic strategic kind of thing. And in some ways a little bit more realistic, you know, when you think of how long space travel will actually take, you know, if we ever get to that point. So anyway, yeah, nice components. These boards are awesome with these little insets. Just a real meaty, chunky, you know, tons of stuff happening in this Euro, and it's very much a Euro game. Anyway, that's Hegemonic. Enjoy. This should be hitting stores soon, and I can't wait to get this played more.